Search and rescue operations are underway for another Cessna plane that has gone missing, this time in Bicol. President Bongbong Marcos is not keen on invoking the country's defense treaty with the United States amid China's aggression. And in fuel prices, potentially, or rather industry projections indicate an increase in fuel prices, potentially putting an end to weeks of rollbacks. Fast, focused, and fearless. Here's a roundup of stories we're watching now. I'm Riza Diaz. We begin the newscast with the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines reporting another missing Cessna plane. The CAAP said authorities lost communication with the Cessna 340 aircraft at 6:46 in the morning today while it was at Abim Kamalig Bypass Road. The Manila-bound flight left the Bicol International Airport and carried 4 persons, a pilot, a crew, and 2 passengers. The local government of Kamalig and concerned agencies are now coordinating with CAAP officials in the search and rescue operations. This comes as authorities continue to search for a Cessna 206 plane that went missing in Isabela last January 24. In other news, President Bongbong Marcos says he will not invoke the country's mutual defense treaty with the United States. This came after Chinese personnel used a military-grade laser against the Philippine Coast Guard in the West Philippine Sea. Marcos Jr. explained that invoking the MDT would be counterproductive as it could escalate tension in the region. However, he pointed out that China's aggression is a contradiction on the idea of a strong friendship between the two countries.
We are in constant contact, of course, with our treaty partners, not only with the United States, but also our ASEAN partners. And that, I think, is the better recourse rather than to go directly to the Mutual Defense Treaty, which, again, I am very concerned.
Meanwhile, China claims that third parties are taking advantage of maritime issues to stir up trouble. Maricel Halili with the report.
This is Philippine Coast Guard, BRP Tarasamang Banwa, MRRV 9701. You are sailing within Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone.
This was the radio challenge of the Philippine Coast Guard on a Vietnamese-flagged fishing vessel caught fishing in Recto Bank last February 9. Recto Bank is in the West Philippine Sea and is within our exclusive economic zone. After the warning, the foreign vessel immediately left our territory. The Foreign Affairs Department says this is part of the efforts to increase the country's presence in our EEZ, following the Chinese Coast Guard's alleged use of a military-grade laser against the Philippine Coast Guard in Ayungin Shoal.
No less than the President has called attention serious concern about the increasing frequency and intensity of actions that are happening in West Philippine Sea.
However, China insists that only a handheld laser was used and that it was only meant to measure the speed and distance of other vessels.
It was not military-grade laser. You know, that's actually this ship, the Chinese Coast Guard ship, is not equipped with any military-grade lasers. What they used was just the kind of laser speed detector.
The DFA has since stood by the account of the Philippine Coast Guard and has called on China to refrain from disrupting peace in the region.
We're calling on China that to cease and restrain from this action kasi hindi lang ho ito damaging, this dangerous, it is also destabilizing in terms of the peace and stability in the region.
But for Ambassador Wang Silian, there are other parties seeking to steer trouble between the Philippines and China.
Whenever China-Philippines relations are improving, there are always some forces inciting trouble. Whenever there is an instance at sea, what they do is not to persuade and promote negotiation and peace, but to provoke confrontations.
On the diplomatic front, DAZA said the Philippines and China were able to talk this week about some maritime concerns. However, the DFA has yet to give details on their discussion. For News 5, Maricel Halili, We Are One News.
We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Riza Diaz. Motorists could possibly see the end to a series of rollbacks next week as oil price hike looms. Unioil Philippines projects that the diesel prices would increase by up to 80 centavos per liter. Per liter prices of gasoline are likewise expected to go up by up to 60 centavos. Industry sources attribute the potential hike to Russia's plan to cut crude production and other factors. Two companies are working to reduce aviation's carbon emission, which is one of the world's fastest growing sources of greenhouse gases. Let's watch this.
Flying is bad for the environment. Carbon emissions from aviation make up more than 2% of the global total, and it's one of the fastest growing sources of greenhouse gases. All of this has put more pressure on airlines and airports to decarbonize. One option being considered is electrifying airplanes, which is easier said than done. Pound for pound, today's best batteries only store about 1/6 as much energy as jet fuel. And since planes expend energy keeping every pound of their own weight in the sky, an electric aircraft can't fly as far, as fast, or as high as one powered by jet fuel. That's where the Alice comes in. It's a 9-passenger, twin-engine plane being developed by Eviation, a startup based just north of Seattle.
Eviation is the world's first all-electric commuter aircraft manufacturer. We're making an airplane that we call Alice, designed for regional air mobility. When Alice enters into service in 2027, it's going to have an initial range of 250 nautical miles. It's going to have a typical cruising speed of 185 miles per hour. There's no emissions from Alice. There's no emissions from the electric plane. There's no tailpipe. Of course, the batteries are heavy. We have to optimize the design of the airplane around the batteries. And that's actually really what dictated the shape of the aircraft. Flying is not the enemy. Flying is our friend. It's carbon that's the problem. I'm an airplane lover above all else, and I want to make sure that we can continue to fly and travel.
Another way to make flying greener is using recycled materials for fuel. That's where Neste comes in.
Neste is an energy company. The really neat thing is the product that we make, sustainable aviation fuel. The creation of our product starts with used cooking oil primarily. And that product exists in the kitchens of many of our favorite restaurants, including Wrigley Field or airports that we use. What we're able to do is run them through conventional refineries and then return with sustainable aviation fuel. Neste currently represents 80% of the world's sustainable aviation fuel production. Some of the exciting partnerships were the airlines themselves. We found ourselves working together with American Airlines, United, Delta Airlines, JetBlue, and many others as they adopted SAF into their portfolios.
But don't get your hopes up about flying from the US to Europe with a zero carbon footprint just yet, with SAF costing 2 to 4 times as much as regular jet fuel. And the sheer weight of batteries, the greening of air travel still has a ways to go.
Now for more updates, visit News 5, The Philippine Star, and Business World Online. Visit our website, onenews.ph, for more in-depth analysis. You can also catch One News on Signal Play app. Register for a free account at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Riza Diaz. We are One News.